welcome back to another episode of The Nerd Out. I am Lyle.
I am Jack.
We are here to unpack last night's sermon, A Rightly Aimed Life.
Life.
That's correct, I believe.
It is, you are correct.
So we are week 2 into a series called Foundational Faith.
2 Corinthians series.
Yep, we're here in the middle of September now, officially.
Yes, I think I saw I don't know if this excites you, maybe it excites you, that here in Tucson, Arizona, no 100 degrees forecasted in the next week. Nice. So less than 100 now. Finally, we have crested over. And
potentially some rain, it looks like.
That's what it says. I mean, we'll see. We need it.
Right. If nothing else, it's just nice in the mornings that it's like
it's been real
70,
nice.
Maybe a little above 70, probably a little cooler out where you're
Yeah,
at,
it was like 67 this morning.
Oh.
A little cool with taking Augusta on our walk this
Less.
morning. It was nice.
That sounds fantastic. That's the nice time of year in Tucson when you can just open doors and windows in the morning and just get some cool, refreshing air. And yeah, it's great. All right, so A Rightly Aimed Life was last night's sermon. Of course, you can always watch that back, which we always link the card to it at the end of the Nerd Out. Easy to find if you can find this one. So a couple takeaways from last night. By a couple, I mean 5.
5.
So,
okay, I'll count them down.
Is that
5.
more a few?
I think that would
Is that the
qualify as a
argument?
few.
Like, how much is a few? It could be like 3 to...
I think 3 to 100, right? Isn't that? Or maybe 100 gets
in that
to
case,
many.
I'll just have a few cookies, thank you.
Preach.
Key takeaways. Number 1, God is the Father of mercies and the God of all comfort. This is a good reiteration from last
tie
week.
back, yeah.
As followers of Jesus, our true north should be the glory of God. Number 3, integrity is crucial for Christians, being the same person in private and public. Number 4, all of God's promises find their yes in Jesus Christ. And then lastly, we are called to keep Jesus as the main thing in our lives.
Yep.
Did we miss anything there?
Negative.
Sweet. Was there anything...
You got the main thing right.
You wanted to just... Ayo. Was there just anything that was worth like clarifying or anything just to kind of reiterate? I mean, keeping the main thing was the main thing from last night.
It was the
I
main
think that's
thing.
the main thing of today.
Well done.
In the Nerd Out.
Wait, let's keep the main thing. I brought
But are there some
the
minor things that we
illustration.
need to emphasize?
the main thing. If you didn't watch the sermon, you have no idea why I'm holding up a foam finger, but it makes sense if you watch the sermon. So, I think, again, being a person of integrity, I said it a couple times last night, but just to reiterate, because sometimes we can talk about integrity and it's like this level of perfection of like, okay, I must not be a person of integrity because I fail or I make mistakes or I choose bad things at times. And the reality is this is not about perfection because no one is perfect. There's only ever been one, Jesus. He's the main thing and the only perfect one. And so it is this idea of consistency. Am I consistently who I am to my friends and to my family, and whether I'm in public settings or private settings, that I'm consistently true to who I am? I think that's what Paul's getting at. I mean, Paul's the one who makes the bold statement, and it's pretty bold to say, well, follow me as I follow Christ. Yeah. I mean, basically saying, imitate me as I imitate Christ. And that's a pretty bold thing to say.
Right.
But what he's getting at is, hey, I'm trying to live this integritous life because, again, he wanted to go and visit a couple times going to and from Macedonia, and it didn't work out. And other people, I think, were trying to twist and just kind of discredit Paul on multiple levels and for multiple things.
It's actually interesting doing the reading and just kind of on the background that they believe that there's a lot of letters that were written between Paul and the Corinthian church. In fact, most scholars, it is the Nerd Out, so I can nerd out on this. Most scholars believe that 2 Corinthians is actually a collection of the letters that Paul sent, kind of edited into one book.
Right.
That it's, at minimum, they think at least 5 or 6 different letters. One person thought it was up to 13, and a lot of people kind of dismissed that person. But that there was a deep conflict in the church. And that was actually why Paul, there's a letter, like when we read that Paul's like, my previous letter, I've always read that thinking it was 1 Corinthians.
Right.
But then there's this talk of this severe letter that Paul had to send that we don't have.
Right.
And Paul sent this severe letter
So it wasn't part of the
in response
canonized
to
scripture.
when Paul did go, that Paul was treated so poorly by at least one person that he left. And that's why he didn't go back, was because there wasn't relational forgiveness. There hadn't been anything that had been fixed. And so Paul is just like, it wouldn't have done any good for me to go there. Like,
And he
this
says
situation
that
has
toward
to be
the end
dealt
of
with.
chapter 1 into chapter 2, the very first part.
Right. It's
And
interesting.
It would
to
have been
get more of that context and realize what's going on.
Well, and it makes sense if he launched this church, spent 18 months, which is a significant amount of time.
Yeah.
I think in our day and age, we go, well, 18 months, it's a year and a half. But for them, like, to invest 18 months, it was 18 months, like 24/7. It wasn't like 18 months at an 8-hour-a-day shift job for 5 days a week.
Right.
Like, it was intense, all in discipleship and development of that church and those people for 18 months, which maybe in church years would be 3 years. If you equate, isn't it dog years or like 1 year to 7 or something like that? So maybe church years is something similar, but it's significant in that. And so, I wish it will be interesting if we can see some of those other letters, and maybe 2 Corinthians is what was canonized into and put together. Obviously, we see all this put together in, I think it was like 55, 56 AD.
And there's a clear arc of like what the letter communicates. So even if it is some letters put together, we can piece together what's actually going on. It's not like it was done poorly.
Correct.
And it doesn't take away from the inspiration of what Paul wrote during those times. So the question is when it was compiled. We don't fully know the answer to that. We just know roughly when it was written and when this correspondence was going on, and that all of this correspondence revolved around a central theme. So,
And the conflict being a significant portion of that, which, again, the sophistication of the Corinthian church, or the chaos, I should say, of the Corinthian church was the complexity of the region at the time. There was a lot of cultural dynamics that were playing into these folks. They felt like, okay, we're sophisticated and above the common folk, and they had a lot of depravity and a lot of mess in this church from the world's perspective that had infiltrated into the way they were trying to live out this way of Jesus with a whole bunch of trappings around. And if we're honest, times have not changed a whole lot. Here we are 2,000 years later, and the church, capital C church, still deals, especially, I think, in our moment of history and our cultural chaos that's around us and influences of ideologies and all that kind of stuff that wants to influence the church, which is why I think Paul gets to the place of, hey, all the promise of God find their pinnacle in Jesus, and let's keep him the main thing above all other things.
Absolutely. And so going back to integrity as well, going down, Paul talking about the importance, it would make sense when we know this historical context of the Corinthian church, why he's saying integrity matters. And if we want to see the opposite, like a contrasting of that, James gives us a perfect example of that in James 1 when he talks about
Don't be double-minded.
Being the teleos person, being single-minded in your pursuit and fulfilling your purpose, versus being double-minded. And the idea of being double-minded, which fascinatingly enough, social psychologists, behavioral psychologists, they're actually starting to talk about double-mindedness with their clients, and that double-mindedness is just, it's a reality that we have to work through. That's part of just our human nature, that there's always a duplicitous kind of inner monologue that we have, and yet the outer person that we are. And how do we unify that? So there's not a double-mindedness, but we can live as a wholly unified person, mind, body, soul, the way God desires us to. And flourish because of it, be healthy because of that.
Which is the point. Part of the flourishing of the human is to be completely whole and not divided, and to be. And there's a security. That's what Proverbs talks so much about. That there is a security and a peace that comes when you're living as a person of integrity. versus someone who's got a lot of hidden things that will come out in some way, shape, or form. And maybe no one will ever know all the details, but it will begin to fracture in the way that you see the world and the way that you relate with people and the way that you interact or react. And it begins to have repercussions into the way we conduct ourselves and the way that we, I think especially the way
we've
we
seen
react
in our country
to
in
people.
the last week.
Totally.
I mean,
Totally.
we shouldn't be waking up and seeing 2 murders on our social media
No,
feed, like
not
literally
at all.
seeing it happen. It's just on top of school shootings and 9/11 and remembering what happened 24 years ago. And it's just, what a heavy week for us to have
Heartache.
to go through.
Heartache.
And yet this is the hope. Like, for those of you, if you came to church for the first time, if you're stumbling on this because of just the craziness of the last week and the evil that we saw firsthand, welcome, first of all.
Yeah.
But that's the big story. The reason we talk about keeping the main thing is because the great hope in all of this is Jesus.
Amen. He is the only hope. Every other facet or thing that will try to maybe manufacture a sense of hope is a temporary reality. The predominant, ultimate reality is that I think we closed the service with this, wasn't in my notes, but the idea of Genesis 1:1. In the beginning, God created. And he's the one that set things in motion. He's the one who has a heart for humanity. He's the one who has a passion and a heart for you, and that he wants to have a relationship with you. That's why he sent his son to deal with the brokenness and the flawedness and the sin and the junk of our world. That's a broken world. And bad things happen to good people. Bad things happen to bad people. Bad things are done by people. And this is not the way it was meant to be, intended to be, or one day will be when Jesus does come back to make things and set things right.
And so with all of that in mind, like people might look at the events of the last week and, it's not like we're afraid of saying the name Charlie Kirk, by the way, but like that's a brother in Christ who that was literally a message he was sharing the day before he lost his life. And like that was an important thing even in his life. But like, I think that's a question is you talk about integrity and yet there is the evil around us. And like, I think there's a lot of people wrestling through, if this is what it looks like to live with integrity, is it worth it? And that's like
a fair question.
That's the challenge of being a Christian in the world today is like, how do we have courage and conviction in this way that Paul's speaking, like all the promises in Jesus, they're yes. Like we see the fulfillment of all of those things and we want to live for that and we want to pursue that. And yet I think there's a very real reality as we read the scriptures of the Christian church suffering for their faith. And like, what's our hope in that today? Like, I don't think we face the same level of persecution in what they were facing. But there's still sometimes fear that prevents us maybe from having that integrity of
there is the tension.
Being able to speak and articulate what it is that we believe in Christ. Like, how do we get there? Like, how do we develop integrity then to be the same person and to let our beliefs infiltrate into our actions in the way that Jesus calls us to live, where it manifests itself in love and kindness and compassion. And that doesn't mean that we let sin slide, like we still, like that's Paul. He rebuked the Corinthian church, and yet immediately his pastoral heart is there that he was grieved, that he had to do it. He was still relational.
Right.
I'm rambling. Go ahead. Sorry.
No, I think I don't know if there is an easy answer to that, but in the nerd out, maybe it's the invitation that integrity is carved one decision at a time. And I guess the best encouragement I could give to you, to us, to myself is do the next right thing. And
regardless of the last wrong thing you did.
Correct. That
Today's a new day.
we can't go back and redo any decision from the past. So the only thing I have control over is the next thing. And I can have influence in that and say, okay, yesterday I lied to, I'm not saying I did, but maybe I did. I don't know. But,
As an example.
we, yesterday we lied to a friend or we fibbed. We didn't tell the whole truth. So what does it look like to be a person who tells the truth? Okay, well, I'm not going to sugarcoat or try to hide things. I'm going to be truthful. I'm going to which is what Jesus gets to in Matthew chapter 5, is let your yes be yes and your no be no. When you try to flower things up or sugarcoat it or couch it in such a way to convince people, instead of just being a person who's whole, this says, you know what, here's how I really feel, here's what I really believe. So it's letting those beliefs that we have as a follower of Jesus that, you know what, humanity's broken. I'm broken. I'm part of humanity, and I need to own that. And I needed a savior. And thank God he sent Jesus for me, and to never lose sight of that. And so I don't ever arrive at perfection this side of heaven. And so I still recognize I have brokenness in me, that I'm still, it's Philippians 1. It's, you know, he who started a good work in you will be faithful to complete it on the day of Christ, which means futuristic. I am a new creation. Yes, we know that. Paul writes about that. But I'm also a work in progress. And so I'm both.
It goes back to last week. I've been rescued, I am being rescued, and
I will be rescued. Right? Yeah. So hence why he is the God of comfort, who can comfort us in the midst of all these changes. So if to form yourself as a person of integrity, just do the next right thing. And maybe be a person who really thinks about your convictions. That we talk a lot around elements of people of Jesus, and that who live out the way of Jesus are people of deep conviction and deep compassion. And they're able to hold both simultaneously. Because I think that's what you see in Jesus' life. Compassion is the most described emotion of Jesus through the gospel accounts, and yet we know he was a person of great conviction. And so in this, how do we become those kind of people? Well, we have to live that out in real life, on a Monday, on a Tuesday, on a Wednesday at work, on a Thursday night when I'm putting kids to bed. It has to work out. I want to teach and impress that upon. That's Deuteronomy chapter 6. It's impress these things upon your kids as a parent. And so what I often did for my kids growing up was I would take I literally called it a teachable moment. I'd call it a life lesson. And I would say, hey, here's a life lesson. And the goal of that is my kids let me have 60 seconds. I had 60 seconds to impart a life lesson or an impression, something that mattered to me, that I wanted them to matter to them, to become a part of their character, a part of just how they lived, whatever it may be as we're going through life. And so it could be as simple as, hey, if like when my kids got older and we noticed a car broken down on the side of the road, and I would say, hey, life lesson, if your car ever breaks down, pull over to the side, put your hazards on, so that people know, okay? That's a life lesson. That's practical. Other life lessons may be, hey, we as the Schulz, our role as followers of Jesus is we're people who tell the truth. We don't hide things, and we're truthful, and so that would be a life lesson. So I got 60 seconds, and I tried to boil it down so that I didn't lecture. I'm a pastor. I tend to lecture, and so that was more so a limit on me to say, I want to make these bite-sized and tangible.
Digestible.
So in order to teach those, I have to actually believe those. I have to actually live those. I actually have to practice those.
Right.
And so to be a person of integrity means I'm practicing that. I'm finding ways to live out my convictions and to live out a life of compassion.
Yep.
And how do we do that both? And I think that's what we see in people that make an impact. I made that statement last night of, we're often wooed by people who have great wealth, but we are wowed by people of great character. So I do a lot of funerals. Did one Saturday, and 400 people crammed into this little chapel at Morena Mortuary of a guy who's 28 years old, Army guy, and was killed in a motorcycle accident. And but the character that people spoke of a 28-year-old, and spoke a lot about his kindness and his compassion, his impact, his charisma, and it was obvious that this guy lived life on a way that it mattered. It made an impact. That many people would show up for his widow and for his kids, and it was pretty moving in that sense. And so, yeah, I think, what do you want said about you? That might be a fair question. What do you want said about you at your memorial? Because we all have a shelf life, and that day is coming for all of us. What do you want talked about? And if you can figure that out, if you want to jot down a few bullet points of just, maybe that's an honest question. Okay, what do I want people to talk about me at my memorial? And what if you just sat with that for 10 minutes and wrote in a journal of, here's the top 5 things I would want said about me. Okay, now, of those 5 things, how do you begin to live in a daily way that you're forging that into your life?
What are the next right decisions to make that will forge that sort of character?
Yep.
Yeah.
So I don't know if that kind of hit at that, but
for sure. I feel like we've gone deep, so we might as well just keep it, because we were talking before we pressed record on this. There's also the tension, so we can talk about integrity, and just a lot of us, I think, if we follow Jesus in the deepest parts of our heart, we want integrity. We want this
that to be
single-mindedness. And yet just the way that culture is stacked against us, we really do have to fight the double-minded nature. But so having talked about that, the other aspect is we want to keep the main thing. And what is the chief end of man? It's to glorify God and enjoy him forever. I've always loved how John Piper made the tweak to glorify God by enjoying him forever. I think both statements work incredibly well. So the whole idea of God's glory can feel very nebulous, ambiguous, hard to grasp. And even you, before we pressed record, are like, I don't fully know how to articulate or even speak to that. Let's just sit in the tension of that then.
I think
how do you describe the glory of God? Just even now, off the top of your head, how would you talk about it?
The glory of God, I think, has a lot to do, and how we couched it last night in the sermon, is understanding it's the story of God is the ultimate story. And his story is to be enjoyed by his creation, and for him to enjoy his creation. And so it is relational in nature. It's not transactional. It's relational. And I think we, as the created, are invited to relate to our Creator, and to know him, to be known by him, to want to point our lives in his direction, to want to live for his story and not just ours. I think our story, people who live for their own story, to their own narrative, what they can create, what they can control, the reality is you're settling for a secondary reality, where there's a more ultimate reality that supersedes, is over or transcends that. Yeah, that's a good word, transcends that. And so it's maybe living for the transcended story of God and who he is. And
I would argue that that's the purpose we're all looking for.
Yeah.
That's
what brings
a lot of people
significance
that
and meaning.
I talk to, some of the younger folks, there's a emptiness, there's a longing for identity that allows them to, like, I don't think many of us struggle with the idea that our own story is
lacking.
Maybe even not just dull. It's not transcendent. It's not something that everybody needs to pay attention to. And at the root of how we're created, and literally it's interesting with the books I've been reading, at the root of our brain and how our brain develops, we are constantly looking for identity. And that's not at an individual level. That is at a collective level, at a social level.
Yes.
And because we're looking for our people and those we belong to, and we're constantly thinking, well, how do my people act? So how am I to act in this situation? There's so many movements that we can attach our identity to. And because it's a core thing, we're making our identity our character. We're making our identity who we are. We're making our identity the totality of who we are. And that's the dangerous part, is because those things, when they're temporal, like you said, when they're secondary things and we pour into that, when life squeezes us, or when that identity lets us down, or that group lets us down, or that group gets attacked, we don't know how to deal with it.
There's a hollowness to that
Yes.
that it makes it feel empty.
Yes.
Like it
and that's the
lacks
beauty of the transcendence
integrity.
of
It lacks the structure to actually hold you or pull you up to
there's
something
no
grander.
framework that gives you hope in difficulty. And that's the beauty of the gospel. That's the beauty of what we have in Christ.
Yep.
As followers of Jesus, is there's a framework that helps us make sense of joy and pain, of times of prosperity, in times of suffering, in times of all of that. The framework exists, and it's to live a life for the glory of God.
Right.
That we want to see the brilliance and the beauty of God on display, which the scriptures tell us we see that on display through Jesus Christ and what he did. The fact that he was able to come to earth and live
He's
his
the
perfect
cornerstone.
life. And yet, not only did he live that perfect life, like he took the sins of the world upon himself in his compassion for the joy set before him, to build himself a community, a church, a foundation, like as the cornerstone.
Right.
And that's what we are. We're these living stones that Peter says that he builds up. Really is a monument to who he is and to his brilliance. That's what we are called to. That's the identity that we do get to
I think,
receive when we receive the gospel.
don't you think that's part of the challenge? Like the hollowness of the enemy's attack by elevating individualism to the what's proposed to us in humanity, in our cultural moment, is that individualism is the ultimate reality. And so what you choose, what you want to be, what you want to create, this is the highest goal. And so the enemy props that up and pushes that, and culture buys into it. And yet that's like, in the end of the day, it's not enough to sustain or to create significance and meaning and purpose. It may feel like it's good, may feel like it's right in a moment.
Yeah.
But
it's an economic principle at play. It's the law of diminishing returns.
Yes.
So, we create whatever that thing is, and there will be joy that we extract from it. But it's eventually there's a newer thing and a better thing that someone else will create.
Which is why I think, like, even it's a joking thing, but you have buyer's remorse, okay? You buy a new pair of shoes, you get a new phone, you get a new car, whatever that is, and you're like, oh, this is going to make my life complete. And then you get it. And then you realize maybe it's a week later, maybe a month later, maybe a year later, my life's not complete. This didn't solve the ache that's internal, or the longing that's internal, because it's not enough. It's a secondary thing that we tried to elevate. And so that's what I was trying to get at last night is when you try to elevate any person or any ideology or any thing, any experience to the highest level or the ultimate reality, it always will fall short. God is the creator of all. Therefore, he is the one who is the ultimate reality. And I want to live for the ultimate reality, not a temporary
and
thing.
Part of that ultimate reality, what I think is really kind of profound. So in individualism, in kind of our culture, if we're thinking of what we create, what we contribute, what did God give us the mandate to do? He said, be fruitful and multiply. And so this command from God is, where we have received life, go bring life, go create life. And so I think that's why there is meaning. At the end of a person's life, I doubt they're thinking of the inventions they wish that they would have created. Maybe Thomas Edison or Nikola Tesla, like maybe some of these brilliant minds were like, I wish I would have been able to do that. But at the end of the day, it's about the legacy. What did we leave behind in the people? Like that's the beauty of the gospel, and what we're called to in the Great Commission is that where we've received life, we get to sow life. We get to speak life. That we get to create life. Maybe if we've brought children into this world through our marriage and whatnot, and there's a legacy that lives on there. But what's the spiritual legacy that we're leaving behind? Where are we helping to create life by speaking God's words of life into others and sharing the glory of God, the beauty of God? That's how this all comes together. When we do that as people of integrity, like our words matter. Like there's weight to those words. And when we make them count for the sake of the gospel, man, God uses that in profound ways.
Think of using your words as investing life into other people, which is what Paul gets at in the first part of chapter 1 is, okay, God is the source of comfort. So he's also the source of meaning and significance. You want to live for the ultimate source of meaning and significance.
Right.
So live for God. And as God comforts you, we can then turn and comfort others, which is just imparting life, imparting hope, imparting significance and meaning and encouragement to the people around you. That's why when you get to live this out to your immediate family, extended family, to your friends, to your coworkers, as you get to speak life into them or bring some hope or help into their life, it's why it makes a difference for you. Like you get a benefit from that because you're helping bring life. So again, it's all back to we're these living stones, and it's this communal nature of God, which again we go back to the Trinity. God is community, Father, Son, Spirit.
Yep.
We are created in His image, so community matters. It's why I think being a part of a healthy church and helping bring life to people in church and outside of the realm of church into your reach and influence that you have is the highest calling and the highest beauty in life that brings and breathes significance and meaning into your life and feeds you, fills you up.
Absolutely.
In that sense. So,
yeah, which kind of one of the questions that I had here is what ways can we as a church then ensure that we're promoting, just with what you're saying, how do we as a church collectively ensure we're promoting Jesus, period, rather than Jesus plus something else? I mean, that's the main thing, keeping it the main thing, but how practically, what does that look like then to make sure it's Jesus, period?
You talk about this, we talk about it of being a gospel-centered community. And so it's continually coming back to letting the gospel be the filter that pushes us in how we live, how we see the world, how we react and interact with the world.
There's a word, by the way, for that. When we talk filter, it's called a hermeneutic. So all of us have a hermeneutic. We have something that we filter things through. There's some sort of core foundational ideology that becomes the set of principles that we use. So where do we, how do we keep the Bible? How do we keep the core kind of tenets of Christianity? Is that, I love that. Gospel-centered community, obviously I love that because I've been saying that. Biased. So what are the aspects of the gospel that create that filter for us? Maybe just to be practical.
I think to be practical, to understand God created, there's a brokenness in the reality of humanity, but God solved the problem, and He solved it relationally, and He's inviting us. So as we talk about,
that's literally a worldview, by the way.
We want to be this
Creation
inviting
story,
community.
Problem, solution.
So we want to be in this inviting community of Jesus followers who are commissioned by the gospel to make disciples and to cultivate relationships with the love of Christ. I think we captured it somewhat in our mission statement of let's live this out in a way that, okay, we're always inviting others, whether they're followers of Jesus or far from Jesus, into next steps with this community of people to experience maybe something they've never experienced, a disciple of Jesus who loves them in a way that is different than the world, who lives in such a way that's different than maybe what the world's promoting or pushing, or the propaganda even of a worldview system, who is discipling their life after Jesus, who's a follower, not just a fan. And let's cultivate these relationships with the love of Christ in a way that is tangible, practical, and helpful. That people go, really I'm experiencing something that I don't experience elsewhere.
Right. I was really proud of my wife. Anya did the pastoral spot between worship and the sermon. And just that, I thought that was poignant, the moment of who here has been blessed or impacted because they've been a part of this community, witnessed that firsthand, and to hear a room full of people.
We're like, me.
And when I think of the aspects of the gospel, we see and we're going to get to this too, reconciliation. The fact that what Jesus brought about was reconciliation, that we get to experience forgiveness. That's what we're going to touch on a little bit next week as well, that all of these aspects play out. So that's what it means to be a part of a gospel-centered community, that we recognize that there is sin, that there is evil, but Jesus faced it head on. I think of Psalm 23. Even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death,
I will fear no
I
evil.
fear no evil, for you're with me. And because God is with us, we can look evil in the face, and we can still stand triumphantly.
Ignore it. We don't pretend it's not there.
No. We know that God is with us and walking through the valley with us.
Right.
What a powerful thing that we can know that, but then bring reconciliation about in profound ways for those who've experienced evil firsthand, or maybe who've been victims of that, and even more powerfully for those who maybe have perpetrated it. Like, that's the beauty of reconciliation, is that there's always hope that regardless of maybe how we've given away our integrity, that it can be restored, that we can rebuild it because the gospel makes it possible through Jesus.
We can reclaim it and begin to walk in it again.
Yeah. And that's why it's just the next right step. What today, for the glory of God, is the next right step that you can make in how you live your life.
Yeah. And I often talk about, God, would you, in fact, one of the prayers I had for our family when I tuck the kids into bed at night is, God, would you leverage our family for your good in the world? We talk about this around here, these sent ones, these agents for God and his good in the world. And so how can you be part of an active agent for
not
God's good? Not
sleeper agents.
Correct.
Active agents.
Active agent for God and his good in the world. And what would that look like to your coworkers this week? What would that look like for your neighbors, for your family members this week? And when the opportunities arise, you go, okay, I'm going to be a person who lives out my convictions, lives out my beliefs. And here's a moment, and God's brought awareness to this moment. I'm going to step into it. Listen, there are a lot of moments I'm not aware of, I miss. And in hindsight, I go, oh man, that was an opportunity for me to share, and you missed it. And you know what? You missed it. And God doesn't think less of you, and you don't need to think less of you. What you need to be is just aware of the next moment and the next opportunity. And so don't ever beat yourself up. Just go, God, would you help make me more aware of the next opportunity to speak life into the people around me and to be leveraged for your good in the world.
To share the comfort that I've received.
Yep. Pass it on.
It's really good. Any final thoughts? Any other things to reiterate before we
I
wrap
think
this one up?
Oswald Chambers, I mentioned last night, when new submarines are commissioned and brought out of what they call dry dock, like when they're being built and then they're put into the water, and they take them down deep into the water in order to test the integrity of the hull, they call it. That's the process. And they do that with a few people in the submarine, because you don't want to take down hundreds of people in the submarine if you haven't tested it. That Oswald Chambers talks about, that the pressures of life are the revealer of character. And so as you go through the pressures of life, it will reveal your character, which means it could also reveal character flaws or the unwelded parts of your character, your soul, the less integritous parts of our life. And so maybe it's just being a person who is, God, would you help me to see the flaws? And then would you help me to bring them to you so you can fix them, so you can re-weld them in a way to make them stronger? I don't want to ignore them, or I don't want to just distract myself away from them. I want to get better through them. I want to have you repair them. And I think that's how you move toward being a person of integrity and a person at the same time who lives intentionally for the glory of God. That it's, hey, am I getting better at being the person Jesus has created and is calling me to be this year than I was last year? That's spiritual growth. We can try to mark spiritual growth by how many Bible verses you know, how many times you go to church. Those are all important, but the most significant is, am I more like Jesus this year than I was last year, or this week than last week, or this month more so than last month, because I'm not perfect, but I want to keep getting better. And that sometimes means God's got to rub off the rough edges and refine me a little bit. He who started a good work in me will be faithful to complete it. So, which means I'm a work in progress. And so, God, help me be aware of the opportunities to join you, leverage my life for your good. Help me also become aware of, okay, that's a flaw, or that's a faulty part of my character, or I missed that opportunity, or gosh, that part of my life is out of whack, and I need to bring it back in alignment with God. So just be a person that's open to that and to the shaping and leading the Holy Spirit to say, hey, whoa, that anger issue that you got that flares up way too fast, we got to work on that and maybe some of the cause of that. So let's get some therapy, let's get some work, let's bring some confession to that so that we don't have to live that way. Because I want you to be a person who speaks life into people, and you can't speak life when you're bleeding all over people or when you're hurting people in the process. So I guess maybe I didn't really get to unpack that.
Sure.
But
Well, it's James 1, right at the beginning. Consider it joy when you face trials and temptations of various kinds, because we know that as we go through that, it can produce. Something. It can, but it says let it have its full effect so that it will produce that.
Yep.
So when the submarine is submerged and we go through the whole test and our integrity is tested, when life squeezes us, are we going to become bitter? Are we going to become better?
Right.
Really, that's the question.
It's our choice, yeah.
Or, nowadays, there's also the third option. Are we just going to be distracted so that we push it down and never deal with it? And the invitation as we follow Christ is to let it have its full effect so that it does produce integrity. Yes.
I think that's huge in our day and age, the distraction part. Maybe in our moment of history.
More so than it's ever been. Maybe.
Yeah. Because it's hard work to refine your character or to become a person of integrity, because that takes effort. And it's much easier just to go, I'm going to ignore that. I'll distract myself with entertainment or something else.
It's the G.K. Chesterton quote. Christianity has not been found, how does he say? It's not been found...
wanting or... Oh, I know.
How does he say?
Quote.
It's not been found, tried, and on. How does he say it?
Google it.
The whole point is Christianity hasn't been tried and then found wanting. It's been found difficult and left untried.
Yes.
And that, here's G.K. Chesterton in the early 1900s talking about Christianity even then being difficult because of what was going on culturally, and because of how difficult that is. People just don't want to try it. It's not that they try it and that it doesn't produce what it promises. It's just it's difficult. And in a day and age that's full of distractions, it's hard to stay plugged into the difficult and work through the difficult because there's so many escapes along the way. So
we say it often sometimes, following Jesus is not for the faint of heart. Some people will say faith is a crutch. No, faith is a cross. It's what Jesus said, pick up your cross and follow me. And that's always a followership of death of self, which is not for the faint of heart.
it's not for the weak.
Right. And so faith doesn't make you weak. It's actually in the process of making you strong, which is the comfort of God. It's not about soothing. This is about courage and strengthening.
Absolutely.
So anyway.
It's good. Well, I thought we were going to get it under 45 minutes today. I think we might sneak it in.
I think
but then I said the thing about
it.
distracting, and
it was good.
We found
it was good.
A whole new thread. So it was good. Yeah, next week we'll be continuing through 2 Corinthians, getting into chapter 2. And covering most of chapter 2 for that. And good job last night.
Thanks.
There's just lots of, at dinner afterward, a lot of talk. Just people felt, they're feeling the Spirit is active at Elements. And just there's a special presence in the room during worship, during the service. And just,
it was a good night.
It really ministered to a lot of souls. And so just
good.
You all had a role to play in that because you showed up, you participated in the process. You're priests. We're all priests that are called to bring the sacrifice of praise and thanksgiving to God the Father with the expectation that he wants to receive it, but then he wants to give back, that he's ready to bless us in response. That's why we gather as a church. So make sure you make the time to join us this Sunday, the Holy Roar at 4.
Whoop, whoop.
We'll be Same bat time, same bat channel.
Bat channel. Gosh, I love that reference. It brings me back to my childhood.
We love you all. You are sent. We hope you have a great week. And, see you soon.